Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and this is another one of our Lyme Q&A with Marty Ross MD, and actually Tara Brook MD, but Tara's not going to be with us tonight, so it's going to be just me. The way that these webinars work for anyone that is new to the webinars tonight is you can write questions to me, and the way to do that is there is a chat box over on the right-hand side. If you go ahead and write your message down at the bottom, press enter, and it will come to me, okay? Now, the one thing about the questions, when you write them, it's best for me in terms of being able to post these questions so that I can read them with you. It's best if you would go ahead and do not click enter while you're writing the question. If you do, it creates multiple questions that makes it harder for me to be able to respond to, okay? So the other thing I want to let everyone know is that tomorrow morning, I will send out a link to the recording of tonight's webinar. So if you happen to miss something, you'll be able to go ahead and look at that tomorrow morning. And then finally, this is the second of 3 of these webinars in August, and we'll have another one next week. So feel free to sign up for that also at the end of the webinar too. It's the summer months, and when I looked early this morning, we only had a smaller amount signed up, and that's how it's continued through the day. So if you have questions, today's your day to be able to ask them, okay? And so let me go ahead and get started here, and I'll take as many questions as there are. If we don't have enough questions to keep me busy the whole hour and a half, then we'll stop early. So feel free to write your questions, okay? All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the first question. This is from Brenda. Thank you, Drs. Ross and Brook. I have Lyme and Bartonella and would like to know how often I should have phospholipid exchange IV treatment to boost my recovery. Also, I have MTHFR and like to know if the lipid exchange will work with regular and non-methylated folic acid and B12. Okay, so what phospholipids are, they're the layer of fats that make up our nerve cells, or any membrane in our body actually, but any cell membrane is made up of a layer of fats called phospholipids, and there's a bilayer. There's actually 2 layers of that. Those can get damaged, especially when you have Lyme, and it can really impact how the nervous system works and how the brain works. At times, it's useful to give those phospholipids, those phospholipid fats, and you can do it by literally injecting them into your veins and into your venous system. And it can help work. It can help improve cognition. It can improve neurologic function. It can be expensive. There are oral ways to do it too that may work as well as IV ways. But IV way is one way to do it. Dr. Brook isn't with us tonight, and she has a bit more expertise on this topic. I'm actually not quite sure the degree of the frequency of doing the exchange, but I can get back to you, Brenda, on a future visit regarding that. In terms of the MTHFR, everyone, MTHFR is a detox difficulty or detox abnormality. And what that word stands for is methotetrahydrofolate reductase, or that's MTHFR. That is an enzyme that is used to take folate in our diet and convert it into an activated form. And once that folate is activated, it is then used to create downstream, many chemical reactions downstream, a chemical called glutathione. Glutathione is your master detox chemical within the body. And to get to glutathione, there's a bunch of small reactions that take place that also do detox work within the liver. But the only way those take place is if you first get this, convert diet folate into activated folate. So that enzyme called MTHFR has genetic programming, and you can get genetic defects that result in the enzyme not being created properly and not working correctly then too, all right? And that's called an MTHFR abnormality. If you want to see if you happen to be one of the people that has this difficulty, there is a test you can do. The The way you could do it is to work through a website called genetic.org, and that's GENETIC, and then Genie, GENIE.org, okay? And through there, you can click on a link to get a test kit through a company called 23andMe. It's a spit test, actually, and you send it to the lab, and then 23andMe does a genetic analysis or creates genetic data based on that, okay? But then you have to go back to the genetic.org site to run it through something called a methylation profile, and they will then tell you whether you actually have this MTHFR abnormality. Now, people that tend to have the MTHFR abnormality tend to be people that are very sensitive to medicines and have reactions quite frequently to them, okay? So if that describes you, you may want to get testing for this. The treatment for it is to give the activated folate. And that activated folate is something called 5-methytetrahydrofolate. And we also find it's useful to give a methylated form of vitamin B12. And that's what Brenda is talking about, okay? So yes, the lipid exchange will work regardless of whether it's a methylated or non-methylated. But obviously when you're doing, if you have MTHFR, as you supplement for yourself, you do want to be on the methylated folate, which is that 5-methytetrahydrofolate, okay? So if you want more information about this methylation or the MTHFR, let me show you an article that we've written for this that you can take a look at later, okay? So I'm going to do a quick screen share here, everyone. Okay, so we're in the Treat Lyme book. And the Treat Lyme book is, as you all may be aware, is where we have all of our information about how to treat Lyme disease. The Treat Lyme book is a do-it-yourself, very practical guide with information that you can use to learn about Lyme and to even design treatments or plans to fill in the gaps where your physician may be missing in terms of helping you, okay? So one way to get around the book is to navigate through the table of contents, all right? These are all the chapters we have. And one of the chapters we have is on detoxification. It's right here. I'm going to click on that. And when you get in here, you're going to see that there's various articles related to detoxification. And one of those is called MTHFR Detoxification of Lyme Bite, okay? If you click on this, it'll take you to the article. And actually, whenever I call something a Lyme bite here on the site, it means there's a video associated with that too. So in that article, we tell you what to do, how to look for it, and how to test for it, okay? Now, one thing about the book I need to let everyone be aware of, to see the majority of the articles in this, it is a subscription resource. Click on one of the articles and you'll see what the rates are that we have for that. But I will tell you, it's very valuable. Often using this, you don't have to bring up these issues with your physician, and you can save yourself resources by following some of our recommendations, all right? All right, so let me go ahead and move back here. All right, so Brenda, thank you for that question. I'll try to get back to you next week on the information about the frequency of the phospholipid exchange, all right? All right, take care of yourself. Thank you. All right. Diane writes, hello, Marty and Terry, looking forward to the webinar. And as everyone has said tonight, Dr. Brooke won't be joining us this evening, okay? Thank you for that, Diane. All right, so this next question is from Marilyn. Hi, Marilyn. Let's see, I'm fighting candida, did 2 months of fluconazole, then tried phytostan, but had an allergic reaction. Is there something else I can try? I'm watching diet and taking Prescript Assist Pro. Thanks so much for your help. Okay, so Marilyn's describing a problem with having too many yeast growing in her intestines, I believe, okay? So if you happen to get too many yeast living in your intestines, it can make your whole Lyme picture look a lot worse. The symptoms that you have of Lyme can get a lot worse. And the reason is when you have too many yeast living in your intestines, the immune system will respond by overproducing a group of chemicals called cytokines, okay? And many of you have heard my discussion about cytokines before, but cytokines are also made in excess by the immune system when you have Lyme germs in you. And they're good and bad. So white blood cells make cytokines whenever they see a germ, and their purpose is to turn the immune system on. So they cause more white blood cells to be made, they draw those white blood cells to where the infection is, and they help the white blood cells work better. Now that's all good. But when somebody has chronic Lyme, the immune system actually does not do a good job and getting rid of Lyme. It actually doesn't do a good job of getting rid of too many yeast in the intestines either, but it keeps trying harder and harder. And eventually it makes too many cytokines, okay? And too many cytokines can give you problems. Basically, too many cytokines give you all of the Lyme disease symptoms. And so too many cytokines make it so you can't think, they give you fatigue, they make your body ache, they disturb how your hormones work. I mean, I can go down the whole list of what we call Lyme disease symptoms, and those are actually excess cytokine symptoms, all right? So you want to get rid of yeast if they're in your intestines because they're also creating part of the mess, all right? So symptoms that make you think of too many yeast are, if you're a woman, getting vaginal itching or vaginal discharge, but also intestinal gasiness and bloating, having difficulty swallowing, which sometimes can mean there's a yeast in your food pipe. If you develop acne that hasn't been there for a while, you have worsening skin rashes, that can sometimes be part of it, and also sugar cravings, okay? All right, so those are things that might make you think of yeast. Another time to think of yeast is if you are doing better, and then all of a sudden you get into a decline. In my experience, about 90% of that time, that can be due to too many yeast living in your intestines and growing in your intestines, triggering more of those cytokines to be made, okay? So in terms of how to treat yeast, there's a number of ways you can do it. And one is to use the fluconazole that Marilyn did. And you would do it as a 200 milligram pill, one pill daily, and you would couple that. You usually have people take it along with nystatin, which is another prescription. Diflucan is more the bazooka. Nystatin is a weaker anti-yeast agent, but seems to help the diflucan work better, okay? And usually, actually, on diflucan, you should be seeing good improvements in your yeast symptoms. We increasingly are seeing resistance to diflucan, unfortunately. And when that happens, there's some other options to try. One of those is the phytostan. It's an herbal compound. And what it's a product made by Integrative Therapeutics. It's got some Pau-d'Arco in it, caprylic acid, rosemary oil, thyme oil. These are all good things that get rid of yeast. Now, if you had an allergic reaction on it, it's hard for me to say which of those components would be, okay? So the other thing you could try actually is grapefruit seed extract, which at one time was in phytostan, but it no longer is. And you could also take garlic. So another natural way that you could do this would be to take grapefruit seed extract, 250 milligrams, one pill a day. And yes, you could use garlic. And actually what I prefer is using crushed garlic. When you crush it, it actually activates garlic to fight germs. And that could be, garlic even treats Lyme, for instance. And garlic is useful in the intestinal tract to clear yeast as well. So in addition to doing that grapefruit seed extract, if you want to work naturally, you might try a clove of garlic, yes, a whole clove of garlic crushed, and you could do that 1 or 2 times a day. I usually tell people to crush it, either put it on food, or you can actually put it in water and drink it in that way, okay? It actually can work. It can give you a Herx reaction for yeast, and it can sometimes even cause a Herx reaction because it can kill Lyme as well too, okay? But other ways that you could do this, Marilyn, would be instead of the ketoconazole, when somebody gets resistant to fluconazole, one of the next steps that I suggest is to use something called ketoconazole. That also is 200 milligrams, one pill, 1 time a day. Or you can try something called itraconazole. It's 100 milligrams, and that's 2 pills, 1 time a day. And I think it's the strongest of that whole group. Fluconazole, ketoconazole, itraconazole, they're all part of a family of antimicrobials called azoles, okay? And increasingly, we're having trouble with diflucan, but also sometimes people develop resistance to the whole class. The strongest agent in that group is itraconazole. If that fails, then I suggest people use something called Lamisil. And if that fails, then the next step is to use a compounded medication called amphotericin. It has to be compounded because it's only made for intravenous administration. But in an oral form, it's not absorbed at all. It stays in your intestines, which is good because in an IV form, it's really toxic, but orally it's safe. And I use that when nothing else works as the amphotericin B, okay? So let me show you the article we have on yeast because it lays out all of these options for you, except I don't describe the grapefruit seed extract and garlic combination in there. So that one I've been using recently and having quite a bit of success with that with my patients, all right? So let me go ahead and do a screen share here. All right, so here we are back in the Treat Lyme book. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back to our table of contents again. And we have a whole chapter actually on yeast. All right, and this is the yeast chapter. That's me when I had hair. I actually just cut that off this weekend. Quite a nice experience when it's hot out here in Seattle, actually. And then down here, we talk about how to diagnose yeast. There's an article called Is It Yeast? And it can be kind of complicated, actually. So take a look at this to figure out if that might be your problem. And then here's our article on how to treat yeast. It's called Kills Yeast, a brief guide, okay? And in here, we lay out, there's a video here with this. There's using the azoles. I just told you about those, fluconazole, ketoconazole, itraconazole. And then there's the alternatives, of which I like the amphotericin B, okay? When somebody gets resistant to yeast, then too, I like using Lamisil. I'll put that down here. And then there's an experimental option that recently became unavailable. You can no longer get the lufeneron, and I'm going to have to get that pulled from the site because it is no longer available. All right, so there you go. That's that article. You can take a look at it later. Okay, so we go back here. All right, Marilyn, there's your answer. I know it's a little long-winded, but I want to make sure that everyone here was up to speed on this whole topic. The other thing that Marilyn points out is she is taking a probiotic called Pre-Skip Assist Pro. That is my absolute favorite probiotic. It's made up of bacteria that live in the soil. And if we look at what's happened in our intestines over the last hundreds of years or so, the type of bacteria that used to live in our intestines was more closely related to what was in the soil. And having those kind of bacteria seem to do a better job of supporting the immune system and helping your gut work well too, okay? And so this is one way of getting back to that. Also, being on a probiotic bacteria from the soil seems to do a better job of immune system regulation as well too, all right? So we like that. That's 2 pills 1 time a day. All right, thank you, Marilyn. Good luck to you. So Faith, yes, the webinar has started yet. I'm sorry I got started about 5 minutes late tonight. I was wrapping up with some patients here, okay? Okay, let's see here. Looks like we've got a back-to-back question posted by Jackie. And Jackie, I do understand, or everyone, I've basically said that we prefer if you don't hit enter when you're writing the question, but if it gets to be a long question, sometimes you have no option, okay? So I'm gonna post Jackie's question in 2 parts. All right, so here's part 1. Hi doctors, hope you are well. How do adrenals affect Lyme? I have been told I have problems with adrenal glands prior to my Lyme, Babesia, and candida diagnoses. I struggle daily with strong fatigue and pain, which typically lasts 3 to 4 hours. Pain often continues all day. I cannot accomplish anything during this. Let me go to the second part here. At this time, people close to me forget, do not understand, or become frustrated when I ask to repeatedly speak low, or when I cannot stand to hear 2 voices or 2 noises simultaneously. Are there any natural treatments aside from the earplugs for noise and light sensitivity? Thank you. All right, let me go. So there's 2 things I guess I'll answer regarding Jackie's question. Number 1, low adrenals and Lyme, and then number 2, what to do about neurologic hypersensitivity, okay? Because the hearing sensitivity you have is a neurologic hypersensitivity. And I'll say more about that here in a minute, okay? So everyone, your adrenal glands are a hormone system that sit on top of your kidneys. And they release cortisol. And I know many of you may have heard that steroids are bad in Lyme, okay? But that's only if we use too much. There's a good amount of cortisol that needs to be made by your adrenal glands to actually support your immune system, give you energy, and just to help your body function in general. All right, and sometimes we can actually even supplement it directly with that steroid. But what I prefer to do is actually work with an herb to support the adrenal glands. So the adrenals make cortisol. They also make another hormone called DHEA that is eventually turned into testosterone. Okay, and they release a bunch of chemicals called mineralocorticoids, which work with your kidneys, tell your kidneys to hold minerals and salts like sodium, for instance, okay? And if your kidneys aren't holding enough sodium, you're not gonna have enough water held in your blood vessels, and you may get lightheaded and dizzy when you stand up because of having low blood volume. So symptoms that I like to look at that can suggest low adrenals are having a lot of afternoon crashing relative to the morning. So your energy dips a lot more in the afternoon compared to the morning. Okay, that's one possibility. Another one is getting lightheaded frequently when you stand because the adrenals aren't making enough mineralocorticoids. And then finally, sometimes people with low adrenal function will have episodes of hypoglycemia or low sugar. And what that will look like is you need to eat frequently to avoid getting jittery or shaky or even moody, okay? And eating will help with that. Sometimes even having protein with each time you eat can be useful for that too, okay? So as part of my Lyme treatments, I always do some screening, these questions that I just went through with you to see if somebody has low adrenals. I also screen to see if they have low thyroid, for instance, too. And in a little bit here, I'll show you an article that goes over both thyroid and adrenals so you can read more in depth about this, all right? All right, now, concerning the adrenals, if you decide that they are low, one of the things that you can do that I like using, and I know Dr. Brooke likes using, is to use the herb called ashwagandha. I like to support the adrenal glands. I prefer not to take over. All right, so herbs that support the adrenals, there's ashwagandha, there's something called Siberian ginseng, for instance, there's rhodiola, there's a number of other herbs too. The reason that I like to use ashwagandha is compared to the other herbs, it tends to be a cooler herb, not a hot herb. Hot herbs are energetically too much in Lyme, okay? Because in Lyme, if you use a hot herb, it can make you feel jittery or shaky or even more nervous. The thing I like about ashwagandha is it does not do that. So usually we recommend ashwagandha at a 400 milligrams. Excuse me just a minute. Ashwagandha at 400 milligrams. Do 2 pills in the morning and 2 pills between 1 and 2. You don't want to take it too late because it might actually keep you awake at night, okay? Now, animal studies tell us that it helps the adrenals work better. It also helps your thyroid gland work better too. And it does improve energy, okay? So I like working with ashwagandha. And Jackie, that's one thing you might consider doing for the low adrenal problems that you're having, all right? All right, now the other thing that you've mentioned here is what to do about a hypersensitive nervous system, okay? So one of the things, Jackie, is I would make sure that you don't have Bartonella as a co-infection. So Lyme can give nervous system hypersensitivity, but also Bartonella is known for doing that as well, okay? So everyone, there are symptoms that you would look to see if they're suggestive of Bartonella. I'll show you an article later that you can look at to see if you might have Bartonella. And actually, I'll tell you what those symptoms are here in a second. But the thing about Bartonella is we don't have good testing for it. We can test for it, but the testing usually will only pick up about 1 or 2 strains, and we think there may be about 30 strains. And Bartonella, again, is another infection that can be transmitted by that tick when it gives you Lyme. And if you get Bartonella, it can give you a lot of problems. So some things that Bartonella can do is it can give you pain on the soles of the feet. It can be part of why you can't think well, can give you joint pains actually, increases daytime sweating, may create a lot of anxiety or even depression, seems to cause bladder problems with burning on urination or feeling like you have to go frequently. It can give you restless legs. It can give neurologic hypersensitivity, even seizure-like disorder sometimes. And sometimes people will talk about it giving kind of an internal buzzing feeling that they have, okay? So with your neurologic hypersensitivity, I would try to figure out if you have Bartonella, and if you do, take it up with your provider. They would probably be able to help you with that. Or we have articles on our site also about how you would go about treating the Bartonella. There are some herbal options, although I prefer the prescription options more in this kind of a situation, okay? All right, so what can you do though to calm your agitated nervous system down separate from treating your germs? Well, number one, what I like to use is a mineral called lithium, all right? So it's called lithium orotate. You take it as a 5 milligram pill, and you do it as 1 pill 3 times a day, all right? Now, lithium may sound like a scary word to many of you because we also use lithium in a mental health disorder called manic depression, all right? Or bipolar illness is what it's also called now. When we use it in that kind of a disorder, we're gonna have a person take usually around 600 to 900 milligrams a day of lithium. Now what I just said, for an agitated nervous system, you're gonna do 5 milligrams 3 times a day. So this is 15 milligrams a day. This is small amounts, okay? And what I'm suggesting when I suggest it that way is we use it as an essential mineral for how the nerves work. It's a mineral they need to work correctly. It has an ability to calm an agitated nervous system. The other thing that it does is it helps improve the ability for nerves to talk together. We call that nerve signaling. And when they talk together better, you can actually get improved thinking. So the other reason I use lithium is that it helps improve thinking, okay? So one thing, Jackie, for you to consider for your neurologic hypersensitivity would be to do the lithium orotate, all right? Another option is to calm that agitation down by using an amino acid-like chemical called L-theanine. That's L-theanine, that's Theanine, all right? It's a component of green tea. It's not caffeine, but it is a component of green tea. And in the brain, it's converted into a chemical called GABA, and our brain is full of GABA receptors. If you give more GABA to GABA receptor, it can calm agitation down. Also, the L-theanine works to calm the nerves by decreasing the strength of the electrical transmission in that nerve. So it kind of calms it down too, right? If you're to do L-theanine, it comes as a 100 milligram pill, you would want to do anywhere from 1 to 3 pills up to 3 times a day. You could do it that way, okay? It may make you sleepy though, so just be aware of that. I would start with the lithium first and then go to the L-theanine and see if that will help calm some of that agitation. And then, Jackie, do not forget to look to see if you might have Bartonella, okay? All right, so let me do a quick screen share here again, everyone. Oh, and I apologize for the noise in the background. We have the world's loudest air conditioning system here, but at least it stays cool in the office. And today in Seattle, I think I got up almost to 90, so we've been having a little bit of a hot spell here. Not typical for us this time of year, and we happen to be one of the rare buildings that that has windows that open that actually has air conditioning. Most homes out here don't even have air conditioning, so people are struggling in the city here just a little bit. But that's the air conditioning you're hearing back there. All right, so let me go ahead and do screen share here. All right, so in terms of how to diagnose things, all right, so we have a whole chapter in the Treat Lyme book called How to Diagnose. Okay, and in here you'll find how to diagnose yeast, how to see if you might have chronic viruses causing part of your problem, how to diagnose chronic Lyme disease, and there's an article called "It Could Be Bartonella or Babesia: The Signs and Symptoms." Okay, take a look at this article because it lays out. Let's see what we got here. So this article talks about the symptoms of Bartonella, and it even describes why I don't think testing for it is useful. Okay, all right. And then in terms of how do you treat Bartonella if you have it, there is the chapter we have on infection treatment plans. And in here, you will find an article about killing Bartonella. That's the article there. It's called Kills Bartonella Brief Guide. All right. And then, let's see, there was one other thing I wanted to show you. In terms of your nervous system, how to calm your agitated nervous system, there is a whole chapter we have called Brain and Nerves, okay? And what you might want to look at in terms of calming your nervous system is take a look at this article called My Brain Isn't Working, I Think, What Can I Do? It's full of ideas, all right? So that's, I'll just click on it here. All right, so this article here talks about all kinds of things you can do when your brain is not working correctly. Okay, so let me go back here again. Oh, one other thing I wanted to show you quickly. So as you know, tonight I have been recommending a number of supplements, and many of you may wonder where to get high quality supplements that we recommend. And so this is the place that our patients get it. This is our site for our patients here at the Healing Arts Partnership in Seattle. It's called Marty Ross MD, Terrabrook ND Supplements. So if we recommend, for instance, something called L-theanine, just click here, write the word in, and you'll find what product we recommend. We no longer are able to put those product names in our articles because of some FDA Food and Drug Administration requirements. But this is the place you can go. We've tried to pick supplements, or we have picked supplements that have the greatest chance of helping you, because the companies that we have looked at, that we have reviewed extensively, tend to be companies that use the most active ingredients. The other thing that they do is they tend not to put artificial fillers into their supplements that could hurt you. And you got to be careful about the quality of supplements you get. And I would advise that most supplements out there, supplement stores and in your grocery store, are not high quality. There's been ample studies done showing that they could hurt you, and that they even do not include good quality active ingredients that they say they might on the labels, okay? So if you're gonna try some of these herbs we recommend, make sure they're high quality, and this is a place that you could actually get them, all right? All right, let me go ahead and move back here again. Oh, the store site is called treatlyme.com, or at www.treatlyme.com. And as many of you know, our Treat Lyme book is found at www.treatlyme.net. Also through that site, you can sign up for our webinars. You can read our Lyme disease treatment guidelines. You can find out more information about where our clinic is and how you get access to seeing us. And also on that site is described how you can get an online consult with me so that you can get help with your healthcare as well too, without actually seeing me here in the office, all right? All right, thanks for that question, Jackie. And I hope that gives you some useful insights, as well as everyone else here tonight too. All right, so I'm just removing those questions. All right. And then Faith wrote back to say it's working. I'm glad it is. Let's see. Okay, so let's see here. All right, this is from Deborah, and there's actually two parts to her question, but the second part is just one word, actually, okay? So Deborah writes, hi, Dr. Ross. What do you think about alpha lipoic acid to help neuropathy when it's given IV? Okay, so it can help, but I think there's something better to do, actually. So alpha lipoic acid, everyone, is an antioxidant that when we give it, either IV or when we give it orally, can help raise glutathione levels. It's actually a building block, if you will, for glutathione, okay? So glutathione actually is the master repairing antioxidant that's made in every one of our cells. It's also made and used by the liver to help with a detox, okay? So it's a very significant detox chemical. Glutathione also is a very strong antioxidant that helps lower cytokines. I already talked with you about cytokines tonight, okay? And you can use glutathione actually to protect and heal liver inflammation if it's there too. So glutathione actually has a lot of uses. Alpha lipoic acid can help increase it. But if you're gonna do IV, I find better success actually just giving IV glutathione instead of doing the alpha lipoic acid, okay, Deborah? The other thing you can do in terms of glutathione, you can get it in different forms. There's an oral form. The product we like for that is something called Trifortify Orange. When you use glutathione orally, you have to be careful to get a variety that can be absorbed. Glutathione has the best chance of being absorbed if it's microscopically wrapped in fat, or we call that being wrapped in phospholipids, okay? And And so those fats are called phospholipids. The Tri-Fortify Orange does that. If you were to do that product, it's 5 milliliters 3 times a day. You can find that on our site that I discussed with you earlier tonight, okay? And then the other ways to get it, you can do it by nebulizer, so you can breathe it in, or you can do it IV. Anyhow, so there's different ways you can use it. The strongest way would be IV or to nebulize, but orally often is good enough for you, okay? So again, glutathione is great, everyone, because it helps with liver detox. It helps lower cytokines. It can help heal any kind of cell damage, including neuropathy, for instance, and can help support the liver in terms of its ability to be able to handle toxins that go its direction as well, too. All right. So let me show you more information about that, because what I just said, a mouthful, and there's a whole article we have about glutathione too. I'm going to do a quick screen share so you can see it and look at it later. Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and do that screen share. All right, so back in our Treat Lyme book, I'm going to do just a search. So you can search our whole index, okay? So I'm going to do that. And we'll look up this article on glutathione now. Okay, so it's called Glutathione, the Great Fixer. Okay, this is it. Talks about all the things that it can do: liver detoxification, help with Herxheimer reactions, do nerve and brain repair, liver repair. And then we talk about the various ways to do it. My favorite orally is the liposomal glutathione. Here we talk about how to do glutathione through a nebulizer, and then finally to do it IV. Okay, nebulizer, everyone, is a machine that helps create a mist of the medicine. And when you breathe in a mist of the glutathione, it gets into the lungs, and it's absorbed very easily into the bloodstream then, and can work quite well that way. Okay, all right. So thank you very much for that question. I actually appreciate that. And hold on here a minute. I'm just double checking something here. All right, so let me go back. All right, thank you, Deborah. Let me get rid of your question here now. Jackie, I'm not going to post your comments, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. All right. Let's see here. This is from Faith. All right. So let's see. I had an IGeneX Western blot test done November 14. And had several VANs come back positive. I'm in treatment. I just retook this test in July, and now my ELISA test, that's what you're talking about, is 40, and I was only positive on band 41. Why not higher immune response? Is this good or bad? Okay, so let me talk about the Western blot and whether it's any good to even use during a Lyme treatment to follow where you are. And the answer is, I don't bother doing it. I don't think it gives you any kind of adequate indication of what's going on with the immune system, or if you're getting better or not getting better. Okay, so there's been studies done looking at what happens to Western blots during treatment, and they can go in and out of being positive. And it may have something to do with how well functioning your immune system is. It's really not clear. Okay. And you know, even when we're done treating somebody with Lyme, at the end, we still think the germs remain in a person. So if we test somebody, right, let me rephrase that. When somebody has Lyme of a year or more, once we get done treating, we don't think we get rid of every germ, okay? And so even at the end of treatment, if we were to test, we might find that the Western blot is still positive. And it already tells us what we know, the germ is still in you, okay? But if we were to test and it came back negative, we also know that Western blots can go in and out of being positive when the germ is in you. So being negative does not exclude having the germ in you, nor does it say that necessarily your immune system isn't working well. It just may happen for some reason, okay? Because I've done that before, and I see people that are just totally healthy, no problems at all, nothing really that says Lyme, get the Western blot, comes back negative, and I used to think that was great. This is not a person who's going to relapse, it's gone. But what I've learned over time is that is not so. They're the person that can, years down the road, go and relapse, okay? So there's no assurance we have based on what the reporting is of a Western blot as to what's happening. Unfortunately, I know many of my colleagues will test throughout a Lyme treatment to see where you are. It's a waste of money, actually. The best way to see where you are is to follow what's happening with your symptoms, okay? One other test that many of my colleagues will do to see where a person is in their treatment is to measure for a type of white blood cell, which is called a CD57. CD57s can be elevated when somebody has a chronic, depressed on the low side. When somebody has chronic Lyme, it's a very specific type of white blood cell, okay? And when it is depressed, it's a sign that the immune system is not working as well. We don't know if it's only Lyme that can cause it to be low. Though we know HIV, for instance, AIDS can cause it to be on the low side, all right? And it is also possible that there may be other things that cause it to be low. It is low 80% of the time. Now, when that test was first developed, my colleagues thought it was going to be a great test. We're going to follow it. It should rise as the treatment goes on, and it's proof that our treatment is working, okay? Well, that's not so, actually. There's been subsequent studies done that show that basically it hovers around a flat line, and sometimes at the end of the treatment will skyrocket up, okay? So it does not steadily rise throughout a treatment, so it's really not that useful as a test to see where we are, okay? And these days, I actually don't even bother doing it. I don't find it to be a useful test that gives me information about what I want to do with my patient, all right? So anyhow, Faith, I know that may not be what you want to hear, but I just want to let you know I don't think it's good or bad. I just think it is, okay? All right, good luck to you. All right, so I just want to let everyone know, again, I said it's a lighter turnout tonight. We've got 2 questions left. So if you have questions and you've been holding back from asking them, free flow to do that, because after I get through these 2 questions, if we don't have any more, we're going to be retiring early tonight, which I'm fine with too. So let's go ahead and see what we can do for these next questions, okay? All right, hi James. Let's see, I have Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella. I had been improving and then experienced a significant relapse last fall. My main problems are severe fatigue as well as insomnia. My question is, how should I be working to increase my energy level, and what is the best way to initiate long-lasting sleep? Okay, so you want to know what to do for energy, and you want to know what to do about sleep. Let's talk about energy first, all right? So there's many factors that influence energy. Number 1 is sleep. Second one is you want to lower cytokines, okay? Because cytokines can produce low energy. And as you know, I was talking about cytokines tonight. They are inflammatory chemicals made by the immune system that actually give you what we call Lyme disease symptoms, okay? And so one way to lower those cytokines is to use curcumin, and I would recommend that. We like using a Thorne product called Riva 500. You want to do 1 pill 3 times a day, okay? So lower your cytokines. Secondly, for energy, make sure that you correct for low adrenals. And I talked about that earlier tonight, but if you happen to have symptoms of crashing more in the afternoon, or if you happen to get lightheaded often on standing, or if you happen to have low sugar frequently, that suggests low adrenals. And for that, you would want to do ashwagandha, 2 pills in the morning, 2 pills between 1 and 2, okay? The other things you want to do for low energy is make sure you're on a good multivitamin. And finally, because energy seems to be stuck, often what I will wind up doing in this kind of a situation is to try to repair the energy factories that are found in our cells, and those are called mitochondria. By some estimates, every one of our cells has somewhere between 300 to 400 mitochondria. Mitochondria are where fat and sugar are burned through a bunch of chemical reactions into cell fuel. When you have Lyme in you, there is an overproduction of oxidizing agents, okay? And when you have overproduction of oxidizing agents, they can damage the membranes that make up the mitochondria. Those membranes happen to be phospholipid fats, okay? And so the way you can fix the mitochondria is to give those phospholipid fats. And there is a proprietary mix of those phospholipids. It's called NT factor. And there's been studies done looking at NT factor and what happens with energy. And when we use NT factor over a period of 2 months, there are average energy improvements of 40%, according to this one study. And also people report better thinking. If you remember from a question earlier tonight, first question of the night was about doing something called phospholipid exchange. And I said it can help with neurologic function in the brain. Well, NT factor is phospholipids. It's a way of giving an oral phospholipid exchange, if you will. The way that you do it is you take 2 pills 3 times a day for 2 months. And then after 2 months, you want to decrease it down to 1 pill 3 times a day for 4 months, okay? And we like using a product called NT Factor Energy that has also has some micronutrients added, vitamins added to it that also help your mitochondria work well, all right? So that's one thing I would do. And then again, follow all of those other recommendations I just gave you about cytokines, get sleep, deal with your adrenals. One other thing is look to see if you have low thyroid too. If you do, that needs to be corrected. Thyroid testing is not reliable. You have to go more by what your symptoms tell you. And symptoms of low thyroid include a cold intolerance, meaning you're the person that has to bundle up with a lot more layers than everyone else in the room, okay? And the other thing that can suggest low thyroid is dry skin, and weight gain can sometimes suggest low thyroid as well too. Hair falling out, okay? Not because you got your hair buzzed like me, but hair falling out on its own, all right? So those are some things to look at, okay? Now, in terms of your sleep, boy, sleep is complicated, and I've got a whole article that I've written about prescription medications and also herbal approaches that you could use, okay? And I'm going to go to that article. It's probably easier just to go through that article and show it to you so you get some ideas from that. All right, so let me go ahead and do a screen share here, James. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to go here. There's a whole chapter, James, that we have on energy and fatigue, okay? And in here, we talk about the mitochondria, basic steps to fix your energy. And that's what I just went through with you, okay? The other thing is there's just an article about the top 4 things that I recommend for low energy. And you could read this article too. So take a look at either one of these articles or both, okay? All right, then in terms of sleep, let me go to our sleep chapter. All right, this is our sleep chapter, okay? And so there's some basic steps you want to take, and this is our article called Sleep 101, The Basics, okay? So first of all, lower cytokines. I told you about that. That can interfere with sleep, and we gave you some ideas on how to do that. Number 2, use good sleep hygiene, okay? And that means trying to use the same time to get to sleep every night, preferably before 10 o'clock. And try to start getting to sleep no more than 30 minutes before that time, all right? Try to take your sleep medicine supplements about 30 minutes or 1 hour before your designated sleep time. No alcohol, no caffeine, limit food intake before bed, and try not to work in your bed. And keep your room cool and dark, okay? So there's basic sleep hygiene. Don't forget to do these. These are just as important as being on any herbs, okay? Number 3, make sure you don't have an underlying cause like sleep apnea, meaning you stop breathing periodically. If you tend to snore, that could be a problem for you. Your doctor can help you look at that. Another thing is make sure if you happen to be a person that kicks your legs around a lot at night, that's called restless legs. There's some medicines you can take for that. If you happen to be depressed, take care of your depression. We give you some herbal recommendations on that. If you happen to be anxious, deal with your anxiety too, and deal with pain, okay? All right, now, if you have these steps don't work, there's an article we have about the natural medicines you can use, and there's an article about the prescription medicines, all right? So in terms of the natural medicines, you can read this article later, but we talk about theanine, herbal combinations, and I give you some recommendations on how to do that. And then also you can take a look at the article later about the prescription medicines we recommend too, okay? So take a look at these later. Again, you'll find them within the Treat Lyme book. I would start with the herbs first. If they don't work, then I would look at doing your prescription medications, okay? All right, let me go back here. Okay, thanks, James. Good luck to you with that. All right. Okay, so let's see here. This next question is from Jean. All right, let's see. Let me get that posted. All right, hello, Jean. Let's see. I've been treating Lyme, Bart, Babesia since 2012. I have tried on a few occasions to stop antibiotics. Each time I start losing my ability to walk after about a month. Do you have any insight as to why this is happening? Still need to continue treating? Boy, Jean, there's a lot in that question, and there's a lot of reasons this could be happening. One could be that you just haven't treated long enough. The other would be that you haven't treated with the most effective regimen for your Lyme, your Bart, and your Babesia. Maybe you have biofilms blocking your treatment. Maybe your immune system is suppressed because your mitochondria aren't working right and they need to be fixed. Maybe you have heavy metal toxicity. There's a whole range of things that we need to look at in this kind of a situation. And I think probably the best way that I can help you look at this, because I need to ask you a lot of more questions. I just can't answer it briefly based on that or with any adequate input, is I'd suggest that you might want to look at doing a one-to-one consult with me, okay? So that is a way to do an internet-based visit with me. I can review your care and I can give you recommendations. If they involve prescriptions, I can't write prescriptions unless I see a person in my office first, but I can give you recommendations that are herbal. I can recommend prescriptions too that you might see if you're a primary care doc or if you have a Lyme literate medical doctor available, they might prescribe those too. Okay? So I just want to show you, if anyone wants to take me up on this type of way of helping you, that gives you more information than you might get in the Treat Lyme book or even in these webinars. Let me show you how you go about doing that. Right? So let me go ahead and do a screen share again. Well, I think I'm going to do a screen share again. Let me go back here. Okay, so this is back on our Treat Lyme and Associated Diseases site. Okay, down here on this navigation menu, all the way on the bottom left-hand side, you're going to see a tab. I'm just going over it right here that says Online Consult. Okay, so this is our one-to-one medical consult service. Okay, and you can go ahead and read more about how this works. There's a whole paragraph down here about how it works. There's a disclaimer for it we need to have you sign. Talks about the requirements. Okay, if you are interested, you can either call Christine, our receptionist, directly. Here's her number. Or go ahead and write to us about what you're interested in. We'll get back to you about how you set up an appointment for this, okay? And I look forward to helping people this way. I do a number of these each week. And some people come back and actually have them done again to continue giving advice to their physician. It's a perfect way of working if you happen to have a doctor that doesn't know Lyme, but they're willing to work with you and prescribe, follow another person's treatment plan. In fact, this is an approach that I often do for people that are getting help from me from England, Australia, Germany. This is a great way to get that kind of care. All right, so thank you for that question. And if you are interested in having me working with you, I'd be glad to help you. All right, take care, Jim. Laura, let's see, what do you recommend is my next steps? I'm not sure relating to what the original question was, Laura. If you want to write that whole question, or just briefly tell me what the question was, and I'll try to answer that if you repost it, okay? All right. Sorry, but I can't remember back to everything I answered earlier in the webinar tonight. All right, let's see here. All right, so this next question is from Deborah. Let's see, Dr. Ross, I have started working out with a trainer, mostly strength training for about 1 hour at a time. I'm sore the next couple of days. I am feeling more fatigue since starting this. Could it be due to overdoing it? I'm not doing more than 5 to 15 minutes of the stationary bike. Thank you. Let's see, I'm working out with a trainer. Okay, so you're doing strength training for about an hour. Okay, so it looks like I want to make sure I understand. So it looks like you're doing strengthening for no more than an hour and you're doing 5 to 15 minutes of a stationary bike, okay? So I'm glad you're working with a trainer. I'm glad that you're getting exercise. When a person is able to, it's a great way of speeding the recovery along, okay? It's a way of overcoming deconditioning, and exercise warms us up. And as we warm up, as we heat up, that causes your blood vessels to dilate, which makes it so you get better blood flow into your tissues, and your antibiotics can even work better that way too. You get better detoxing as well. Okay, so it's a good idea. But there's you can overdo it in Lyme, unfortunately. So you kind of have to pace yourself depending on where you are. So general rule of thumb that I tell my patients is to do exercise to tolerance, which means if you are paying the price the next day, you're doing too much. You have to kind of figure out by trial and error, what is that level that you do that doesn't leave you wiped out the next day, okay? You can be more tired the same day, but the next day is what the issue is, and that's what you're describing here. So you might want to, instead of doing strength training for an hour, you might want to drop back to 45 minutes or even half an hour and see if you're not paying the price so badly the next day. You just kind of have to build back into it based on what your body can handle. I get concerned when somebody actually repeatedly exercises to the point of causing lower energy, because that can probably suppress the immune system. Okay, so you got to be careful about that. And yet you have to balance that against the point that actually getting exercise can be helpful for recovery too. So it's a teeter-totter. You have to be careful. All right. Good luck to you, Deborah. All right. Let's see. You guys are posting more questions. This is good. I'm gonna try to make sure I stay until 6:30, aren't you? I was looking at the sunshine outside. I was thinking I might get out a little earlier, but I did say post more questions, so here we are. All right. Hold on here just a minute. Okay, let's see. I've got to look at one thing, everyone. All right, so let's see here. All right, so this question is from Susan. Hi, Susan. Good evening. Let's see, have you heard of chaga? I know it's from mushroom of the birch tree. Do you have any experience with this for treating Lyme and co-infections? Thank you, Susan. And some make a tea. You know, I'm not familiar with this one. And I know even talking with Tara, I haven't heard her being familiar with it before too, although she might be. So I guess I can't comment on that, Susan. I can look into it a little bit more and give you some feedback on it, but I don't know. I don't have personal experience with it. It's not a mushroom that I would commonly use, okay? All right, thank you for that question. Good luck to you. All right. Hi, Kara. Kara or Kara? I can't tell. Obviously, I don't get to know the pronunciation here. Welcome. Let's see. If Lyme and or other co-infections or viruses are not treated, can one ever recover from chronic gut recurring conditions like leaky gut or SIBO? Okay, so everyone, what leaky gut is a condition of the intestines. I'm going to answer your question, but I want to explain to everyone what leaky gut is so that we can get a better understanding of how to answer your question, okay? So leaky gut is a condition of the intestines, all right? And so to describe what it is, I want to describe what the healthy intestines look like, okay? So basically healthy, or what the intestines are, there's a tube. You all know that. Inside of the tube is where you have stool and poop, okay? And then there is one layer of cells, so each of these is a cell, okay, that keeps the poop from getting into blood vessels, which are down here, okay? So inside the intestines, one layer of cells, blood vessels, all right? All right, now in between the layer of cells and all of these blood vessels down here is a bunch of immune cells, all right? In fact, the largest part of our immune system is the gut lining, all right? It's huge. There's a lot of immune cells there, okay? Now, normally, when you have a healthy gut lining, these cells touch up against each other very tight. There's no gaps, okay? And the ways that things get from the inside of the intestines that we want to get in, they have to be taken up and absorbed, taken to the inside of one of these cells. They get passed through into this white blood cell matrix, immune system matrix here, and then eventually into the blood cells, okay? This acts as a big filter. It keeps things out that can inflame the immune system, all right? Now, if you get yeast growing on these cells, or if you get intestinal parasites living on these cells, or sometimes I think even if you have Lyme or the co-infections, I think they also impact how these cells are. These cells will plump up and pull apart, okay? And then you get gaps. And through those gaps, things leak in and they hit all of these immune cells down here, okay? So especially if there are things getting through that could be toxic to you, or that you might, that might not cause allergies if they're small particles, like small particles of wheat, but then you get a big particle through. Suddenly they hit all these immune cells and they react, and they can set up allergies. They can release more inflammatory chemicals. You can become extremely sensitive to many types of food because big particles get through. So what you want to do is you want to treat the infections to heal the leaky gut, all right? The number one condition actually that can lead to leaky gut is having too many yeast living in your intestines, all right? And I know you didn't even have that on your list here, but too many yeast can be one of the greatest causes of that. I talked earlier tonight about how to diagnose too many yeast. If you did miss that, there is an article within our Treat Lyme book about how to diagnose yeast, okay? You can find it in the How to Diagnose chapter, all right? So first, I'd make sure there aren't too many yeast, and if they are, I would treat that. The other thing is I would continue to treat your Lyme and your Bartonella, your Babesia, your co-infections, okay? And usually throughout the as you start treating, if it's leaky gut for those, I see that usually will take care of itself pretty quickly without necessarily being done treating your Bartonella or your Babesia, okay? If I've got somebody that has ongoing stool issues, abdominal pain, gut pain, mushy stools, then hard stools, gassiness and bloating, and I treat them for yeast and that doesn't correct those symptoms, I'm going to start wondering if they might have intestinal parasites that have been missed by testing, okay? And I'm especially going to think about it in people that have done a lot of international travel, where the water sources may not have been the best sources, okay? Or people that grew up in rural areas or in cities that have well water. Well water, even though they may tell you it's clean, doesn't have infectious microbes in it, parasites are hard to tell. And there's a bunch of them that can pass by without even being detected, okay? So often when people have a lot of intestinal problems, doctors might get a stool test to see if they have too many parasites. But it literally is a microscope exam. You look under the microscope and you see if you can see the parasites. Well, they're hard to see. You're seeing if you can see the parasites, you're seeing if you can see eggs of those parasites, and you're seeing if you can see parasite arms and legs, or parts, if you will, okay? The trouble is they're hard to see, so they can be missed. So if I've got somebody that I've treated yeast, they're still having gassiness, bloating, maybe mushy stools, the next thing I may consider doing is actually treating for intestinal parasites. And I would use something that I consider to be universally active, something that treats regardless of what the parasite is. My favorite is a prescription medicine actually called Alinea. And that's something you would do twice a day for 3 months. If that's not affordable, or if you can't get a doctor prescribed, another thing you could try is a prescription called Biltricide. And that is, there's a whole article I have on it, but the way you use Biltricide is you take 1 pill 3 times a day for 3 days, and you repeat it for another 3 days the same way 21 days after you took your first pill, okay? So that's another way to treat it. There are herbal ways to treat your parasites. The big one is to use something called black walnut. I just don't find it to be that effective, all right? And then in terms of SIBO, SIBO to me, I've seen, so SIBO, everyone, means small intestine bowel overgrowth. And a way to see if you might have that is to do a breath test. And what I have found is even if people have it and they're treated, I don't often see the gut symptoms get better. I think it's an irrelevant diagnosis, to be honest with you. I just don't see the benefits of treating it actually, okay? So in terms of leaky gut, get rid of yeast. You're not getting much better, probably go for parasites. And yes, absolutely keep treating for your Lyme and your co-infections too, okay? All right, hope that answers your question. All right. So let me go ahead, I'm just gonna do a quick screen share here again. Okay, so we're back in the Treat Lyme book again, and go here to our table of contents. All right, so in here, again, I would just look at the infection treatment plan section. Talks about how to treat yeast, talks about how to treat parasites, okay? This is our article on parasites. I even got a video associated with that one too, okay? In terms of viruses, I don't think the viruses are responsible for leaky gut. At least that's been based on my experience. Okay, thank you for that question. Kara, thank you for your, Kara says, great webinar, by the way, too. Thank you, I do appreciate that. And next time you write in, tell me about, give me a pronunciation so I know whether it's Kara or Kara, all right? All right, thank you. Okay, let's see here. Okay, hi Laura, let's see. I have been on antibiotic treatment for Lyme for about 1.5 years and 6 months for herbal Bartonella. Oh, 6 months herbal for Bartonella. I want to transition to all natural and am now off antibiotics. I have gotten extremely fatigued and afraid of relapse. What should be my next steps? All right, let's see. I've been about 1.5 years and 6 months herbal for Bartonella. I want to transition to all natural and am now off antibiotics. So first of all, something for you to consider, and this is just a comment about the fatigue part, and then I'll try to answer the rest of your question too. So if you've been doing better and then suddenly start getting worse, one of the things, so if the fatigue is more of a recent occurrence after doing better, be sure to consider if you have too many yeast in your intestines, okay? As I've mentioned a number of times tonight, when you get too many yeast in the intestines, they kick up cytokines. And again, those cytokines are what give you Lyme symptoms because they get overproduced when you have Lyme. But if they also get overproduced when you have yeast, and it can make it look like your Lyme got worse, when in fact, really what has gotten worse is yeast, another source of cytokines, okay? So consider that you might have too many yeast. Again, the points to consider with that are, do you have sugar cravings, any increased intestinal gasiness or bloating, any vaginal itching, vaginal discharge, difficulty swallowing sometimes because you can get yeast in your food pipe and it can make it hard to swallow. Other things to consider would be, do you have worsened rashes, do you have acne, okay? Those are things that make you think you could have too many yeast, some of those, any of them. And sometimes if I can't find any other reason to explain fatigue, I might sometimes treat for yeast anyhow. Because my experience is about 80, 90% of the time somebody's been doing better, they get a decline. After they've been off treatment, it's because of too many yeast, okay? That's just what my experience is, all right? All right, so the other things to consider, after you've figured out if it's because of yeast, and I suspect it probably is, when somebody is done with an active treatment, there's some things that they should continue to do to keep the germs under control and to prevent relapse, okay? Number one is make sure you're getting a good 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And if you have to use drugs or herbs to do that, use drugs or herbs to do that because that helps boost your immune system and it lowers cytokines, okay? Number two, try to do some degree of exercise that you can tolerate. Like I said earlier tonight, you have to do it to tolerance. You don't want to do an amount that is continually knocking you down because if you do, that can suppress your immune system. So you got to be careful about that. Let me see here. The other thing you want to do is make sure you're eating organic foods. I know they're more costly, but you don't want to put poisons in, okay? Be on a good multivitamin. The one that I prefer is something called the Energy Infusion by a company called Integrated Therapeutics. It has many minerals in it and essential herbs and antioxidants that can help your immune system work better, okay? So I would definitely want to make sure you're doing that. The other thing I like people to be on is medicinal mushrooms. I like a mix called the Immune Builder 5 Mushroom Formula. It's got the big three that are in it are reishi, shiitake, maitake, and it's also got some cordyceps in it too. Those are great mushrooms to help boost your immune system. Another alternative to the mushrooms is to use something called transfer factors. Transfer factors are made by the detective part of the immune system. They talk to the army to say, fight a germ. And there's transfer factors made against each type of infection we get in this. So for instance, there's transfer factors for Borrelia, which is Lyme. There's transfer factors for Bartonella. There's a transfer factor mix for the Lyme germs called transfer factor Lyme Plus. You would do that 1 pill twice a day. So you can either use your mushrooms I talked about, or you can do the transfer factor Lyme Plus, okay? Now, all of this is written down, by the way. It's written down in an article that I have about what to do at the end of treatment, okay? And I'll show you that article here in a minute, all right? Now, the other things you need to consider doing at the end is you can just do that and take a wait-and-see approach. See how you hold up. If you do start relapsing, and I can't tell whether you're relapsing because if it's just energy that's gone low and all of your other Lyme symptoms haven't come back, there's a good possibility it is not a relapse you're having, okay? But if you are relapsing, if you get back into a full germ treatment right away, you're usually going to pop out within about 4 months, okay? You're going to get back to your good level if you jump on it right away, all right? Now, if a person relapses, or if they're a person that was severely ill with Lyme, in addition to all of these things that I just described to support and boost your immune system, I'm also going to recommend that a person is either on low doses of my favorite 2 herbs to kill Lyme, Otoba bark extract and cat's claw, which is also known as banderol and cemento. I would dose them at about 15 drops twice a day instead of 30 drops twice a day that we might do in active in treatment. So I would use it at a level to suppress the germs, to kind of swat down the germs if they should start coming up, okay? The other option instead of that is to use a single antibiotic to police the environment. And I like using either Biaxin or doxycycline, minocycline, or Zithromax to do that, okay? And there is an occasional person, we just cannot get off antibiotics. We just have to leave them on them permanently, whether it's 1 or 2 or a group of herbs, because as many of you know, for most people, if you've had this for a year or more, we're not getting rid of the germ. The best we're doing is knocking it under control to a degree it does not bother you. And for some people, unfortunately, that means we just need to have constant antibiotics going in. That's a situation similar to another infectious condition that some people have called HIV and AIDS. People with HIV and AIDS live long, healthy lives. We just got to put a lot of antivirus medicines in them to keep their germ loads under control. In fact, they live lives about as long as I do or any non-infected person would, okay? And for some people with their Lyme, that's what we have to do too. Not antivirals, but to be on prescriptions, all right? All right, so Laura, let me do a quick screen share here for you. I want to show you the article real quick. Okay, so we're back in the Treat Lyme book again. And go to the table of contents. We have a whole chapter in here about the end of treatment. That's it. It's called the end of treatment, all right? And the article that I was just talking about is finished, How to Prevent Relapse, all right? And the other articles in here, for instance, is there a Lyme Dun test? No, I know many people try to do a Dun test, but there isn't such a thing. Take a look at that. And I have a whole article here about the transfer factors as well, okay? So feel free to take a look at that, all of these, and I think you'll find some useful information. All right, let me go back here. Okay, thank you, Laura, and good luck to you. Hello, Pedro. I think you've been here before. Let's see. I'm positive for Lyme via IGeneX, iSpot, and the culture test. I followed your successful treatment recipe, and I've been on various combination of oral antibiotics for 14 months with minimal improvements. Let's see, my LMD just started me on IV antibiotics, 4 grams Rocephin plus 500 milliliters or milligrams of Flagyl. I'm going to go to a second part of that question here. Oops, I think I just got that. Second part of the question is he also wants me to continue with my oral antibiotics, which includes 200 milligrams of Doxy, 300 milligrams of rifampin, and 200 milligrams of Bactrim. I also take cholestyramine as a binder. Is this too much in your opinion? And Pedro also says through another question, I'm also waiting for my MTHFR results. Pedro, I don't know. I would need to ask you a lot of questions to figure out what infections are going on. And at this point, maybe it has nothing to do with infections. Maybe it has to do with other problems that can keep people unwell when they have Lyme germs living in them, okay? And so I'm going to show you some other ideas to look at. But if you do want some more direct input from me, I can't tell. I have to ask you a lot of questions on this. Feel free to try out one of our one-to-one medical consults, the online internet consult that we have. I'd be glad to help take a look at this with you and give an opinion on it, okay? But I want to do a screen share because there may be some things to consider besides doing antibiotics here too. So let me go ahead and do that real quick. Okay, so in our table of contents, again, there's a whole chapter about what to do when you're not getting better, okay? And Pedro, the successful treatment recipe that you've tried is the essential steps you should be doing throughout a treatment. And I'm glad to do that. You still need to keep doing those things, okay? Everyone, Lyme treatments work about 90% of the time, but sometimes it's difficult to get through treatment. We got to look at other ideas. So some of the other ideas that we have that I tell people to take a look at are, do you have adequate detoxification going on? And Pedro mentioned the MTHFR. We also need to make sure you don't have problems handling and processing Lyme and mold toxins. You also need to look at whether you might have heavy metals like lead and mercury toxicity, okay? Now there's articles below, I'll show you those in a minute, in this chapter for each one of these topics, okay? The other thing, you want to make sure you don't have biofilms, which is a slime layer blocking your treatment, or at least that you've tried to do some specific things to deal with biofilms, all right? And I think you said you're on tinidazole. Tinidazole is a great biofilm breaker. Tinidazole that you're on also is a great cyst buster for Lyme and can treat intracellular Lyme too, all right? The other thing I'll start looking at, if somebody is not getting well, I'll start considering whether they might have chronic virus infections in them that got activated. So all of us have viruses living in us, but sometimes in Lyme, the immune system loses the ability to keep them under control and they can become part of the problem. And there's some testing you can do to figure that out, and there's some treatments that you can do for that too, all right? So you take a look at the article called Kills Viruses, a brief guide on that. Make sure you're doing things to correct your mitochondria. I already talked tonight about mitochondria dysfunction and using NT factor for that. Yes, absolutely, make sure you've got your co-infections taken care of. And I can tell by looking at that regimen, he thinks you must have co-infection, at least of Bartonella still. And then consider that for some people, after they've had Lyme in them, it can trigger autoimmune problems, okay, where the immune system attacks you. And so there's an article we have about that as well, too. And then finally, definitely make sure you don't have too many yeast living in you. That can be one of the predominant reasons that people look like they're not getting better, okay? So below here, these are all the articles. Every one of them you can click on here, okay? And I'll show you just one here real quick because and I'm not sure how well you're going to see this on your computer, but this article called What is Lyme Disease? A Mess of Things. If you read every one of these blocks, these are things that contribute to a person having Lyme, okay? Or not getting well, continuing to feel poorly when they have Lyme disease. So parasites, mold toxicities or mold living in you, intestinal yeast, detoxification problems, poor functioning immune system, inflammation, problems with your sex hormones, thyroid can be low, adrenals, other infections, toxins, the genetics that you have, heavy metal toxicity, chemical toxins, whether you're exercising enough, are you getting enough sleep, what is your diet like, okay? All of these things can add up to giving you continued Lyme symptoms. And this is what I would have to try to start looking at with you, Pedro, okay? All right, let me go back here. So Pedro, it's quite complicated, all right? I forgot to show you, but if you look at the website, the www.treatlyme.net, look all the way over on the left-hand side at the bottom, and you'll find a link for our online consults if you'd like to go ahead and sign up for that, okay? All right, so thank you for that question. I appreciate it. And with that, everyone, there are no more questions, and it's the time to end the webinar. It's about 6:26 here, okay? So, as usual, I enjoyed visiting with you tonight. I have a great time doing these webinars. And I hope that you will join me again next week when we have another one of them. Hold on here, I'm trying to get something set up. All right, so in a second here, I'm going to take you over to our treatlyme.net site. So if you want to sign up for the webinar next week, click on the webinars page and you'll be able to sign up from there directly for next week's webinar. If you're interested in reviewing the Treat Lyme book and seeing what's available there and possibly considering purchasing it, you can do that from there as well too. If you want to get involved, if you want to actually have a subscription, click on any article that is not a free article and you'll be asked to subscribe to see what the subscription runs for that too. And keep in mind, when you support the book, you're actually supporting this kind of work where we do these free webinars, okay? All right, good to see everyone tonight. Saw new faces and saw familiar faces. In the end, we actually had a pretty big turnout, so it was good to see everyone. And I look forward to seeing you next week. And tomorrow morning, you will get an email from me saying that the recording is ready and how you can access it, okay? Good night, everyone.